Good morning, Matt Waldman. Here we are. The combine is over. We've learned some really incredible, important things, I'm quite sure. Mostly, I've learned that it's 29 days till the debut of this year's rookie scouting portfolio. Tell me where we're at.
Yeah, we're gonna get the tight end chapter done this week, and then we'll be moving on to the other three positions. So just gotta finalize my rankings today for the tight ends, and then I can write up the chapter. So I'm excited about that. I'm glad that I'm done with the bulk of the film watching phase that's been going on for I don't know, about 11 months, probably longer than that. But so it's nice to kind of start putting everything together. And of course, you can go to mattwaldman.com.
Going through the positions, working on tight ends. Was it like the Kama Sutra, or is it the rookie scouting portfolio?
It depends, So it depends on your point of view, and
of rookies.
All point of views are welcome. I'll just put it that way.
Go to mattwaldman.com before I so rudely interrupted him in his final sailing point. It is sort of super smooth, super easy order process that you will all appreciate and enjoy.
PayPal or Stripe.
Yeah, Stripe. I've tried both. They both work.
See, there you go.
And
just
also,
like the Kama Sutra.
Well, some of it does. Not all of it when you're like 63 years old, I got to tell
you. Next, Bob Harris' sex life. Or I think we're just going to talk quarterbacks.
It's probably as good as it gets.
Miracle upon miracles. There we go.
There we go. All right, let's dive into some post-combine chat. Like just in general. This is a general feel it or fuck it. And I feel like we're getting our answers from the players as more of them opt for waiting until their pro days more so than doing the work at the scouting combine. Feel it or fuck it, the combine in general.
I would say still feel it, but it's not for the reasons people think. So I feel it for the interviews that the teams get to have with the players. I feel it for some of the drills that the coaches may specifically be looking for players to put them through. And that would be about it. And then for players that maybe people, for certain drills, for players who really need to kind of show something, there's some that we're going to talk about today who will fit that. But for most who have already gotten their draft status fairly cemented within a range of 2 rounds, probably fuck it, for the most part. And it's not worth them having to go through some of this. And you see that most of these players, look at the running backs, and barely anybody ran a 20 shuttle or a 3-cone drill. And I just found that, and to me, that's more valuable than the 40. So this has become a glossy, in a lot of respects, it's become a glossy circus where I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of a marketing event for NFL draft media, where it's kind of, not all people do this, but I feel like it's a lot of, look at me, I'm here, aw shucks, I'm so lucky that I lived this wonderful life, follow me and let me update what I've got going on. There's a lot of good people out there, and some of them are doing it because they know that's the game they got to play. But I would just say that it's become more of a media circus in that regard than anything. Though I am very proud, I will say that the fantasy community this year comported themselves extremely well. And so it was the NFL media that actually had to say, "Oh, last year the Caleb Williams question, hold my beer. Let's just go ahead and have a drama-filled moment at Starbucks between 2 top NFL people." So yeah, I would say I'm still feeling the combine.
In case anyone missed it, the Jordan Schultz Ian Rappaport fight that did not happen was still very entertaining.
I'm putting my money on Schultz.
I am too. So just in general, I think this has become more of a, NFL media, but mostly just an NFL marketing. They get television out of it. They get coverage on multiple networks. It's talked about every day in all the NFL media. And so, yes, the NFL media benefits from it, but mostly the NFL does. I do think there are things probably more important that go on there, like player interviews and the medicals and all the kind of stuff that we're not looking at. Yep. But we'll hear about because everyone's talking. But to me, and it has been for a number of years, Cecil Lammey, our colleague, said it kind of as he was heading in. It's the the final day before the final 2 days, the first 2 days of the combine are basically every GM and coach in attendance takes a turn at the podium and they say things. And in my experience, that's like as much truth as you're going to get until the season starts. Comes during those visits. And Cecil says, the season of lies begins, immediately after the combine. And I totally agree with him. But my experience tells me that. And I thought it was interesting that this year, some of the things that were said on the podium came to pass within hours or days. And we're going to talk about a couple of those things. But, Brett Veach and Andy Reid both saying, oh, Travis Kelce's coming back. And then 2 days later, Travis Kelce saying, I'm coming back. I mean, he hadn't said that up to that point. We can go Deebo Samuel, John Lynch saying, hey, we're working to, grant his wish for a trade request. And 3 days later, he's traded. So, and just a lot of flags get planted and a lot of things are said. And if you kind of read between the lines, maybe you don't have to focus as hard and read as intently and connect as disconnected dots. There's a little more to work with there and enjoy it because it's done. Right? We are now
the groundhog peeked out of the hole and then jumped right back in.
And I was just going to remind everyone, every team gets one first-round draft pick. So as you're out there reading about 30 different players in play for 32 different teams, that's, each one of them interested in 30 guys, that's probably not true. They probably know the guy they're interested in or have a pretty damn good plan. And so, yes, I'm telling you something you probably already know. There's a lot of smoke going to be blown over the next 2 months. So steel yourself. Get the gas mask on. So a couple guys that didn't work out.
Or don't put it on. Or don't make sure that you have clean air when you're inhaling through that gas mask, as a certain Miami offensive lineman or hopeful Miami offensive lineman learned. Yeah.
Right. It's coming, kids. So Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders did not do much, in general here this week. And I don't think anyone was expecting that, but bigger picture, they did meet, there was some meeting with teams and that's interesting, but let's just bigger picture look. Ward and Sanders, immediate starters in the NFL, feel them or fuck them.
Well, it doesn't matter what I think overall because the owners are going to dictate this, and sometimes they're going to, Paxton Lynch wasn't anywhere ready to be a starter, but they said, feel it, let's go ahead and put him in, or, a bunch of other guys like that. But I would say that Cam Ward has a better chance than Shedeur Sanders to be an immediate starter where he comports himself well enough that people aren't going, oh, he's a bust. Of course, then, if we can look at Caleb Williams, and we talked about that last week. But I would say that Ward has a better chance of that because he is a creative player off structure. And a more creative player than Shedeur Sanders is, and the athletic ability will translate better than what Sanders. Sanders is a guy who needs that a really strong nucleus around him to play to the level that he's capable. Whereas I think Ward, you would like him to have that, but I think that he can show enough for you to say, okay, he's not going to completely fall apart if the nucleus isn't perfect.
I think Cam Ward would agree with you and Sanders would not. And as you would think, right? It's exactly what you expect. And we'll see. I mean, there are teams early in the draft that need quarterbacks. We know how that goes. So I would expect both.
Hey, listen, Marquise Lee and Calvin Ridley didn't agree with me about their isms.
That's true.
But okay. All I'll just say is,
okay, victory lapper. He's got the track shoes on today.
Hey, listen, I waited 3 years to put that one out there, but that's all right.
All right, Doc Brown.
Let's go. Prove it. Yeah.
All right. Running back class, super fast, super deep. The top of the field offers multiple immediate contributors. Feel it or fuck it.
I feel it. It's just a matter of whether or not they get onto a team, they show enough in pass protection where a team feels comfortable with them to do it, or whether they get drafted behind a pretty good player who seems to be on his way out by the fantasy crowd, but they seem to James Conner their way into continuing to play well. I see you, Trey Benson, and feel you, but you're behind James Conner, and the guy's a workout warrior. So you're going to have some of those situations. This is one of these classes that I don't think it's an elite class, even though the speed is going to bump them up. But yeah. I think it's a good class, and to me, a good class is one of those where we've talked about this before, you're going to see probably, we may say there's 15 to 18 running backs who could potentially become contributors at some level in this class, maybe more. But, after injuries and after, fuck ups off the field and all things that happen like that, let's say there's 10 backs who could possibly do it. I bet there's going to be like 6 or 7 who actually, who probably give you 2 seasons that are starter worthy, but predicting that it's going to be their first 2 seasons,
right,
or their first and their 7th season, or their 3rd and their 6th season, that's going to make this class kind of wacky that way. But the top of this class, there are enough guys that they can come in and at the very least be that B back in an A-B combination where they can be the power guy, or they could be the A back, the one who's going to be put in space and say, Travion Henderson, we don't trust you between the tackles unless it's perfectly blocked up. But just like DeAndre Swift, where you maybe have a quarterback who draws, who draws like 3 defenders in one direction, and now he's got great matchup advantages like he did in Philly. Great. But out in space, very good. Travion Henderson is a good example of that, who I wouldn't even qualify as the top of this running back class, but most people do. And for that reason, he's probably going to be able to play that DeAndre Swift, Travis Etienne type of role. Maybe even a little better than those guys, depending on where he lands, or a little worse, depending on where he lands. So yeah, this is if you're going to be drafting this year, running back is going to be one of your primary targets.
Felt like it was that last year. I think we get carried away every year. I remind everyone that, special teams, running backs are a staple of special teams. And guys like Kamani Vidal and Dylan Lobby would like you to know not every hot name, kind of under the radar, cool rookie ends up doing great things as rookies. That doesn't preclude them from developing into something later. But a guy like Lobby, I mean, if you couldn't rise to the top of that group with the Raiders, it's it says something to me. But anyway, there are always there's always players who do rise up. I think this year, you like a guy named Tahj Brooks. Tell us why he should be higher on the radar.
Yeah, but and I'll add this though. I remember a guy named LeGarrette Blount who couldn't rise on some also ran teams and found his way to the Patriots and did pretty damn well.
It happens.
Yeah, some guys just don't get a shot, or they get one shot, they fumble, and everybody goes, forget it.
Right.
So that was Lobby. But Tahj Brooks, yeah, I mean, I would say, should he be higher on your radar? Well, you're going to look at my rankings and most likely say, oh, yes, he should be much higher on the radar. But that, I would say my pre-draft rankings aren't going to be about where the guy's drafted. I expect Tahj Brooks to be a late-round pick, probably because of the strength of what he did at the Combine. Day 3, absolutely day 3. If he's earlier than that, then I'm going to be thrilled for him and thrilled about his fantasy prospects. But I would expect day 3, if not a priority UDFA contract.
Okay.
But he should be on your radar nonetheless, because running back is the position where the UDFAs tend to be we have more UDFA successes than not, than just about any other position. So yes, he reminds. And I will say this: I was probably one of the few people who really liked Le'Veon Bell at Michigan State. And I talked about how his short area agility was the calling card for his game. Not his speed, but he was a big dude who could really move and create and be able to take bad plays and mitigate the losses and turn them into gains. And be able to do that with his short area change of direction and acceleration and his vision. And on top of it, he had contact balance. So when you can make people miss direct angles and then just run through them, that's a Marshawn Lynch type of behavior. That was a Le'Veon Bell type of behavior. Walter Payton was great at it. Tahj Brooks, my nickname for him is Lemonade Stand, because he turns lemons into lemonade, and he paid his way through Texas Tech basically doing that. And looking at his agility scores, while it's not a 6.75 3-cone drill that Le'Veon Bell had, which is pretty amazing, I think it was 6'7", 5". It's 6'9", which is still well within the realms of elite for that. And his 20 shuttle was also elite. So, it showed on the field, it showed up at the combine, and then the big surprise was I thought if he ran anything under 4.65, it was going to be a victory for him. For him to run 4.52 is a major victory for him.
Yeah, we saw a lot of those major victories, but just a little behind the scenes for you people out there. Matt Waldman, when we're having day-to-day discussions, I hear a lot more about that shuttle run than I do about 40 times, much to my chagrin. Wide receiver class. Not viewed as strong, generally speaking, while the tight end class is. Is that true? Do you feel it or fuck it, that statement?
I'd say I'm going to say that fuck the whole statement. Like, I would say in this standpoint, because I think this wide receiver class has some guys who are capable wide receiver twos, maybe even strong wide receiver twos. And there may be enough of them that we're going to think this class was a little better than we thought when we go back and count it. But if we're counting it by primary wide receivers who can do the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, or even just approach that kind of thing, you're going to be sorely disappointed. I don't think there's many, if any, of them in this class. But if you're looking for guys who can be the wide receiver to complement Devonta Smith, Jordan Addison types, or the Mike Williams, T. Higgins types, any of the bigger dudes, or maybe even a Drake London that you can occasionally slide in as a slot hybrid and get away with calling him a wide receiver one, then yes, I think there's going to be some of those. The tight end class, everybody's viewing this as a big class, but 5 guys who could possibly become low-end starters to mid-range starters, to me, does not equal the weight of a Brock Bowers or even a Sam Laporta when they target him. I don't think there's anybody in this class who is even in the tier of those 2 guys. But I think there are a number of guys in this class who could eventually make their way into the top, 8 to 15 tight ends in fantasy within 2 to 3 years. So it's a good class. I don't think it's a great class. It's a great class by NFL standards because there's a lot of them who might be able to contribute.
I think, generally speaking, heading into the combine, Tet McMillan has been at the top of the wide receivers, if not the top wide receiver from Arizona. Tyler Warren is the same at the tight ends. Let me put it to you this way. McMillan is to wide receivers what Warren is to tight ends. Feel it or fuck it and expound.
Feel it. Totally feel it. And maybe for the viewers, I'll joke that I'm saying fuck both of them, which is probably relative to their buzz. Yes. Right. I think they're both good players who could become starters. I just think that Tet McMillan, everybody talks about his length and his ability to catch the ball and what he can do a little bit after the catch. But what they aren't talking about is how his ability to separate doesn't look good in college and doesn't project well to the NFL. And I can't even remember the name of the receiver. You'll remember it, Bob, I bet, because I'm going to invoke the name and people are going to get freaked out when I say it. But he's a different receiver than this. But the Patriots draft pick from Arizona State, who was like the
N'Keal Harry.
N'Keal Harry, yeah. Like, I don't think he's the Arizona's next version of, I know it was Arizona State who had, I know, but same state,
raised in Tucson. No offense.
People are going to be like, don't draft a receiver who went to a school in Arizona. But right. But no, I think Tet McMillan can be like maybe a Mike Williams, realistic view of what T. Higgins actually is. He might get closer to that level, but he's got to show that he can separate first. If he can't separate from defenders in man coverage, he's just going to be a zone guy who can win, contested targets, which has value, but doesn't make him a guy that you want to draft in your top 20, top 30, if you ask me, at wide receiver. And then we look at Tyler Warren.
You just don't like him. You got a grudge against Tyler Warren. What is it?
The T-Rex arms, no. But, what's funny is I didn't think about arm length, but when I would watch him, I'd go, this guy looks stiff. Like, when he goes up and he high points, he wins targets. So, like, he wins those balls, but he looks really stiff, straining to try and, like, extend his body. And I thought, this is a guy I'd want to put through a workout just to see how mobile he is. How much body mobility does he really have? Because he looks like trying to lift his arms above his head he looks like he's doing this, as opposed to anything else. And it doesn't look like he can get his arms up. And I goes, is it his pads? Is it just optical illusion? What is it? But I'd say more than anything that the issue is with Ty Warren is that he's not as fast as I think people think him to be with his size. He's a ball winner, but like McMillan, it's in zones. He's not going to match up like Kelce at the beginning or prime of his career, or Antonio Gates or Tony Gonzalez, and say, okay, we're going to beat press cornerbacks. We're going to take your best coverage guy, and I'm going to beat you, with that. Or I'm going to be an absolute mismatch with safeties. I don't even think he's a mismatch with safeties other than for his size. He's used a lot as a runner. He's used a lot as a short-range receiver, which I think all those things are fine. But I would take Pat Freiermuth, his fellow alum, 8 days out of 7 over Tyler Warren right now. And I think Warren is a guy who he's not even that great of a blocker. Like, you can use him to maul mismatches with smaller guys, but that's more scheme dependent. You can do that with a lot of guys. He's not someone that mauls people on the offensive line like some of those old Penn State tight ends do. To me, he's kind of more in the mold of a Mike Gesicki type of Penn State tight end than a Pat Freiermuth type of Penn State tight end. For me, that's, and even then, I'd say Gesicki's probably better at this stage than Warren is going to be right now. So Warren, to me, is probably the most overvalued tight end in this class, if everyone's putting him as the consensus number one, because he's not.
The Gesicki comp is interesting because that's definitely not how he's being marketed, right? That's not the player he's being projected to be.
Brock Bowers and George Kittle, if they're that, I'm John Coltrane. That's all I got to say.
So I think it's interesting, and in this business, I been in it a while, and so you don't fool anybody when you're doing what I do. You're not fooling anybody. It's a very knowledgeable audience, and I don't pretend to be a draft expert, a draft Nick. I'm not watching these guys play college football. My first exposure to a lot of these players is the combine, and occasionally players catch my eye, and most often when they do, it's that gauntlet drill. I thought Mason Taylor, the tight end, caught my eye on that drill. Just looked very smooth and natural doing it. I can go back and thinking, the first guy I think I said, wow, that guy looks like Vincent Jackson way back in the day. There's just players that look like that guy belongs. And I thought Mason Taylor was that guy. I don't know where he'll go or where he'll wind up. But I think you don't see a lot of the top names out there, doing these things either. So we'll see where it is. But I think it's interesting that I'll just have these perceptions of players based on a narrow band from the combine, and then I like to just follow up on them. But like Ted McMillan and Tyler Warren, definitely being marketed as the heavy favorites. I think some of these guys that I saw, including Taylor, including others, Ferguson, I think the tight end looked pretty good. Back to the wide receiver, I thought there was guys that looked like they moved better than maybe people had been talking about them coming in. So we'll see where that plays out. There's another guy who declared for the draft, Arkansas receiver Andrew Armstrong. Should he be higher on our radar? Feel that or fuck it?
Well, I mean, listen, he's also probably going to be a late round pick UDFA, like Tahj Brooks. He had a combine where he ran a 40 that Daniel Jeremiah said it pretty well, I believe. That's what I heard was he was like, if he runs under a 4.6, it's going to be a victory for him. And he ran like a 4.52, which was fantastic because what he can do is he can play inside or outside, He tracks the ball very well. I think he's one of the better route runners in this class. He's got great size, great ball skills, and I was just shocked that he didn't get a All-Star game invite. In fact, I mentioned to someone connected to the heads of the All-Star games, who did some work behind the scenes for them, that I like this guy a lot, and they called up and recommended that guy to them. But I think there were other things going on, namely Andrew's brother Arthur Armstrong, unfortunately, who had mental health issues and had to have the police called several times to help him get to a hospital. He had an unfortunate demise. He was killed and shot by a police officer while he was going through a mental health episode where he was armed and considered dangerous and came out a police officer. Now, I don't know the whole story, and the family's upset about it, but this happened in mid-December of 2024. So I'm sure that Arthur was very close to his older brother, who was 26.
Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew's 22, Arthur's 26. Arthur's I'm sorry to confuse that, but Arthur's the 26-year-old who unfortunately passed. So I'm sure that he has personal stuff going on with his family and everything that's going on here, that there's probably been some distraction there. But purely as a football player, Andrew Armstrong is one of those guys that, if I'm going to predict two players who will vastly have the talent to vastly outplay their draft position, it will be Andrew Armstrong and Tahj Brooks. So if your radar is well calibrated, he should be much higher on your radar, that means instead of going, I don't care who that is, I don't know who that is, you should be thinking, okay, late rounds. I should be considering these guys in the late rounds, unless they're drafted higher because two teams see what they need to see and believe that there's an opportunity for them early and they can get a bargain.
Okay, fair enough. So I kind of buried the lead there. I want to circle around just, my thoughts on Mason Taylor. Like, just where are you at on him?
Well, I'm going to have it finalized today, but as of today and everything that I'm looking through, Mason Taylor's the top tight end on my board. It's close between him and Colston Loveland. But Taylor, like you, I thought he was extraordinarily smooth at what he does as a route runner. He can win against man. He can win against zone. He may not be the best athlete of the folks in the group, but he is very good at catching the football. And on top of that, the blocking that you want to see from a tight end, he gives you some promise of being a good inline tight end, as well as being a guy that can win in the intermediate ranges and short and intermediate ranges of the field, which is all you're really looking for. Because the more you're looking for a guy to go deep on you, the more likely you're looking at a guy who's really just a bulked up wide receiver. So you don't want you want a guy who's more in that short intermediate range and very crisp at what they do, can run after the catch and give you all those elements. So I think Mason Taylor is probably the safest and best option right now. There are a few guys that may have more upside, but we'll see if they hit that upside mark. Namely, like, say, Elijah Arroyo, who's got the speed to stretch you deep. Right. And I think that there's a good argument that you could say, if you want to add an upside element as the play, he's not so far away from Mason Taylor that maybe you would just wait and roll your dice on Arroyo. But Taylor, I think, can be, a solid player who can, if in the right offense, could probably give you some of that Mark Andrews type of style of play. It's just a matter of whether or not he can get in there and develop that rapport or not, and the fit being right.
Available next year, the armchair rookie scouting portfolio by Bob Harris.
That's right. We just get Bob to go. We're going to send Bob to the combine.
I like that guy.
Maybe you and I'll go to the combine, and that way we can do here's the overly analytical version, and then here's the Bob going, that guy's good. Feel it. By the way,
Jason Taylor comes from good stock, good family. Jason Taylor, his father, the Hall of Fame defensive end. So
there you go.
A little athleticism. All right, off the rookies, on to some of the events that happened that I mentioned at the top. We heard that Matthew Stafford had permission to go out and speak with other teams. Some of the reporting ended up with Jordan Schultz and Ian Rappaport fighting. And in the end, Matthew Stafford stays in Los Angeles. Best possible outcome for him, the Rams, Puka Nacua, Feeler Puckett.
I think maybe his wife, the best possible outcome would be his wife inviting Jordan Schultz and Ian Rappaport on a podcast. I think it could vault her into the stratosphere.
She's not already there?
Hey, listen, I don't know. I don't want to get on her bad side, but
don't want to count her views against ours. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying. She might be hot in L.A. But I'm just talking about fly over America. Maybe maybe that'll help out a little bit more. But I would say, yeah, it's a best possible outcome from the Rams, because I think most teams that have young but established talent as their nucleus, oftentimes what happens is they end up with a quarterback who hasn't really gotten the foothold to be the player that he's capable of being. Look at the Cleveland Browns. They had a young, established nucleus of offense, defense, really good trench work. They got some key veterans, and then Baker Mayfield just hadn't learned his lessons that he's learned now. So I think you want to time that up perfectly, and I think with Stafford, maybe he's a little bit on the older side, but I would take Matthew Stafford over Daniel Jones. I'd take Matthew Stafford over Derek Carr. I'd take Matthew Stafford over Russell Wilson, especially for that offense. I'd take him over Aaron Rodgers. So, that's what your available talent looks like. So I think it's good for him. He doesn't end up on a team that's going to, that the offensive line's going to make it worse for him. And it's great for Puka Nacua because they already have the rapport. He fits what Stafford does well. You don't want to mess all that up. Let these guys just gel and continue to build on the layers of rapport that they have and establish more of that, and it just makes his team better.
I think a couple of our colleagues at Football Guys kind of nailed it. Sigmund Bloom, by the way, had it I think the minute the Rams said, "Hey, go out and test the market," and Sigmund said the best, here's what's going to happen. He ends up being a Ram. But I think that was basically everyone's desired outcome, and this was an effort to let him go out and see what the actual market is. So if the Rams weren't willing to pay him everything he wanted, he would realize nobody else is either. And there was some interesting reporting, 90 to 100 million guaranteed over 2 years, in talks with the Giants and Raiders. And I don't know how realistic any of that was. I doubt that's what he's getting in Los Angeles. But also doesn't have to move. He's got a team built in. Dave Kluge, another one of our colleagues at Football Guys, noted, had a nice note. Cooper Kupp, yards per game with and without Matthew Stafford, 20-yard difference. Kenny Golladay, yards per game with and without Stafford, 40-yard difference. Golden Tate, yards per game with or without Stafford, 25 yards difference. Calvin Johnson, over 20 yards difference. So Stafford, for our purposes as fantasy investors, is more than capable of fueling the fortunes of the players we're most interested and invested in. I think that's what's important.
And he was the precursor to Patrick Mahomes as a stylist. Look
at you go. Look at you go.
So
all right.
There we go.
I feel that. All right. Giants turning their attention to the aforementioned Aaron Rodgers. Feel it or fuck it?
I'm feeling it because, one, he doesn't have to move very far. Two, he's still in a massive media market. Three, he's actually going to a team with better trench work. And the organization, while I think I would joke that Giants fans seem to have this we know better than most of other fans what's going on, and we're gonna prop up that UDFA we picked as if it was like we've just stealed the show and then their team sucks. I would say that this team is in better position to turn it around and give the Giants fan the reasons to feel a little bit more conceited, in the way that they used to feel that way back in the day. Rodgers, I still think, has enough left. I think as long as he has an offensive line, we're going to see more of that. So giving Rodgers Malik Neighbors will be very happy. He's not going to mispronounce that dude's name. And I think that they will work well together, and we'll see them Rodgers will probably be able to attract another receiver who will be helpful. To me, Garrett Wilson is the example of basically an unrefined Malik Neighbors. I know some people will go, what are you talking about? He's a top 12 receiver. And I'll say, yeah, I mean, he's that talented. But Wilson is more the talent who still needed to refine his game a bit. Massive talent, whereas Neighbors is both talented and refined. And so I think that this team doesn't have as many pieces that are important, especially along the offensive line and defense, that Rodgers could be in a situation with the Giants where, honestly, they could turn into the wild card team in the NFC East. They could sneak in, especially, it could be Washington. It's Philly, Washington, and the Giants, and I'd say, with Rodgers, you might see them challenge Washington, even though I know Washington's the hot team. We're going to talk about them more. But I'd say that they're the dark horse wild card team with Rodgers there.
Yeah, I just like you were talking about the comparison. The NFLPA report card came out where the teams grade all the aspects of their respective teams, and the Giants did edge out the Jets. I think Woody Johnson's F, the only F among all the owners, was probably a difference maker there. Giants ranked 20th, and the Jets overall ranked 29th. So you should check that out. You can find a link to that in my fantasy notebook.
It's a brick of a difference. That's all. Yeah,
it's a brick. Yeah. So Giants turning their attention to Rodgers. Raiders maybe turning their attention to Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold. You feel or fuck any of those guys?
I'd be okay with Wilson or Darnold. Mainly as long as the Raiders do what the Steelers didn't, or look the other way. The Raiders don't do what the Steelers did, which is sick Arthur Smith on Russell Wilson after he threw for nearly 500 yards against the Bengals and said, "Don't change my system. Don't make changes based on what the defense is doing. Do exactly what I tell you because my ego's attached to this. Don't you understand that Daddy told me I could be a coach, but I had to make sure that I was like the big name in what I do?" I mean, listen, it's ridiculous. If you look at what he did to light up the Bengals, and the Pittsburgh Courier, I believe, is the newspaper that reported this, to me, that's the nail in the coffin for Arthur Smith. I wanted to give him a chance for all the bullshit that happened in Atlanta and all the crying that happened with him. But when you start, when you take a player who's actually performing well and tell him to stop being a quarterback, just be a pixel in my offense, and I'm going to control you, even though and then the results are worse. I think that's awful. So I would say Wilson is better than what we saw, most of what we saw in Pittsburgh. Fields, you saw what Fields was about. I don't think Fields is any more than 2 or 3 years away from growing into something more than what he is. Darnold showed enough with a good team around him that I think he can be what the Raiders hoped Aiden O'Connell could become. I already think that Darnold can give you more than that. Darnold's probably the wisest choice long term. Russell's the best choice if you're going to draft somebody behind him that you think can overtake him and be the long term answer.
Raiders pick 6th overall might be who's available might be a determining factor there, but they'll have to pick their quarterback. By the way, feel or fuck it, audience. Matt Waldman's mocking tone. I feel it. Leave a comment. We'd like to hear your thoughts.
About Arthur Smith?
Yes.
Fuck Arthur Smith, man. That dude, I mean, seriously.
You're going to get a lot of arguments.
I mean, I know. I'm just playing to the crowd, I guess.
Wait a minute, though. In defense of Arthur Smith, his reputation was forged on being a super hard worker who didn't have, totally divorced himself, could have gone and worked for Daddy. Could have done a lot of things. Instead, he slept in the film room and he made copies for everyone and went out and got coffee and worked his way up. So you're mean-spirited.
He did what he was supposed to do.
Exactly.
And then he got the opportunity, and then he decided that his ego needed to be attached to what he's doing, as opposed to, maybe I let the players do what they're supposed to do. And one of it is quarterbacks are supposed to look at the defense and make adjustments.
Look, I'm not part of the media who's told him he was a genius, but that's what he was told. He
really?
believed him. Probably his mistake.
Fuck those people in the media who who didn't know anything about him and said that he was a genius because somebody told him that was the case.
Hard-working man, Matt Waldman. Brutal. Saints claim they're fine with Derek Carr as their starter. They did visit with Cam Ward, by the way, at the combine. Feel it or fuck it with Carr as their starter, or do you think they're sold on that?
Oh, fuck it. The players
use your mocking tone, please.
The players hate him. The players. Right? If Chris Olave and listen,
Chris Olave's family openly hates him.
Yes. And then like Mike Thomas. I mean, I know Mike Thomas has a rep.
He hates him.
You know, people look at him as a bit of a diva, but if you know his history, we've been through this before. If you know his history and how hard of a worker he was and how important it was to him to be on the same page with quarterbacks and do all that, if he's like ranting about Derek Carr, he's giving you some truth that the Saints don't really want you to know.
He rants about him unbidden, right? Like he just comes out of nowhere with nobody asking his opinion and offers it up.
He's got PTSD from Derek Carr. Like this, I mean, like
I'm guessing Chris Olave will too, for the obvious reasons, right?
If something happens to Derek Carr, the two main suspects in New Orleans will be the families of of Olave or Thomas. I'm telling you,
Thomas is going to leave his family,
or maybe Ryan Day at Ohio State. Maybe Ohio State. Maybe some. Just some Ohio State alum. Maybe we'll have to worry about our buddy over at our Ohio State buddy over at Football Guys, who gave us some of those Football Guys RSP subscriptions. Devin Knotts, exactly. In the library with a candlestick.
Just in general, Carr in the Kellen Moore style of offense. I mean, Kellen Moore's. We've seen him work with a variety of quarterbacks. Where does Carr fit in that hierarchy?
Just on the lower end of it, because no matter what Kellen Moore puts in front of him, Derek Carr is Derek Carr, which is basically a guy who reads the defense reasonably well pre-snap. You give him a lot of opportunities to make those reads, and he can do reasonably well. But pressure and the cumulative effects of pressure during the game basically lead to him fucking up at the end. Here's
the thing I'm most certain about Derek Carr. When you turn on NFL Network, his brother David will be defending him no matter what. Okay, so there's my mocking voice.
I liked, and David, I feel bad because if David was honest with himself, he'd just look and go, if I had the length of career, if I could have had the length of career and protection early on that Derek had, man, what could I have had? But he's looking at a Peter Principle version of himself.
All right, so let's just say Ward or Sanders, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, either of them, either or both, better options in New York, Las Vegas, and New Orleans.
I would say Sanders would be best in New York if they get Aaron Rodgers, because he can sit behind him for a couple of years, possibly, and work his way into being in a good scenario. He's played well with a ball winner in Travis Hunter. He'll do that with Malik Neighbors. He can get a start to really develop his game. I think if he goes to Las Vegas and New Orleans, he's going to get thrust into action way too early, and he's not going to be as good. Whereas Ward, I think any of those three options are fine. But I would say I would love to see Ward in Las Vegas behind Russell Wilson. And then if Wilson struggles, or if they want, or Sam Darnold or somebody like that, he can get a couple years again. And he can develop. But if he gets thrust to New Orleans, he's a better option than Sanders there, just because he can create, he can move around. And I think that he's better at throwing receivers open. He will make some mistakes, but he'll be what the Saints hoped they got out of Spencer Rattler and then some. You know?
Right.
So,
I like that comparison. Yeah, that's a good call. All right. Fair enough. Deebo Samuel traded to the Washington Commanders. Is he a lock to be the wide receiver 2 opposite Terry McLaurin? Or basically, and by the way, Noah Brown, De'Ami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, I think they're all looming free agents. So is he a better option than any of those three? You feel it or fuck it?
I feel it in the sense that, yes, because he's a great fit for what Cliff Kingsbury does. But it also just tells me that what the Washington Commanders are doing, I was going to say Redskins, what the Commanders were doing, it is essentially they're refining the weapons that fit the system. And Cliff Kingsbury's system is going to be screen, RPO, RPO. Deebo Samuel is going to fit that very well. He gives you the body type of Noah Brown, the speed of Dynami Brown, and the route ability and quickness after the catch of Olamide Zaccheaus. He's basically all of those guys wrapped into one. And then you can use them out of the backfield and creatively. So for a horizontal offense that the Commanders generally are, with a vertical component locked, dashed into it, Samuel is going to be very busy, and he's going to be a big part of that. The big question is, and I think it's important because Cliff's going to be Cliff. I don't think Cliff's changed anything about who he is, and I think that teams are,
going to figure it out.
If the teams figure it out, that may be okay now, because if you have the weaponry that's good enough to win matchups, it doesn't matter if they know what's coming. They still might not be able to stop it. So the hope is that Deebo can be part of that.
I think this year is a bigger test for Jayden Daniels for that exact reason. I think we're going to find out a hell of a lot about Jayden Daniels in year 2 of this offense. Also, Washington averaged 5.1 yards after the catch last year. That ranked 21st in the league. Deebo averages 9 yards after the catch for his career, although he's coming off a career worst year. I was totally unimpressed. I'm sorry. I was down on Deebo last year. I was never bought into what he had going. Just didn't seem to be working. Whether he just got tired of the circumstances, which is entirely possible. Change of scenery often leads to changes in attitudes and, if not results.
Yeah, and he's tried to leave for 2 years now, 3 years.
2 different times he's tried to leave. Right.
Yeah.
So the role hasn't been as robust, and last year was obviously not a great year. So there we have that. Samuel will make life better for Terry McLaurin. Feel it or fuck it.
Yes, I think he will, just from the standpoint that now you have a high-low game where you can do a little bit more with McLaurin as that intermediate option, or you can line them up on the same side and create confusion with the defense with two-man route combinations.
That's
Yeah, it might not be, but you can do a little bit of that. He might throw a little bit of that in there for sure. It's enough. There's going to be enough of that to see. So I think that, yes, on a certain level, more weapons makes life better for McLaurin on that standpoint. The big question is, can Deebo stay healthy now?
Right.
Did the 49ers do what the 49ers, like a smart team, does? They may go, we'll toy with, we're going to give you the carrot, and we're going to keep pulling the carrot along, Deebo, until we've worn out every last bit of use out of you.
Meal, right?
And now we'll sell you. And now they got rid of him. Yeah, and I think I'm worried that the Commanders might be a little high off their fumes about, especially their front office, thinking that they've maybe turned things around, and they ended up falling for the bait and switch. So we'll see with Deebo. Hopefully he stays healthy enough.
Yeah, Football Guys, where we ply our various trades at times here, has Jayden Daniels in their initial projections, quarterback 1. An optimistic outlook. Does Samuel make that more likely? Feel it or fuck it?
I think it's very possible, yes. I think Jayden Daniels as QB1 is in the range of possibility. I also think Jayden Daniels as QB15 is in the range of possibility. And
you thought that all along.
But I've just tried to maintain a sober outlook about Daniels. No, I don't hate him. I really think he's pretty good. I just think that I don't know if I'm ready to say he's really good yet. He has really good moments, and I just want to see. I look. I have a process of how I do stuff, and my process is with quarterbacks. I like to see 18 to 30 games out of them, and I want to see the growth, because I saw a lot there where it was kind of padded in, and he did really well with the things that some of the big boy stuff they asked him to do. He did really well with. So that's good, and that's promising, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to say QB1 with him. But I think it's within the range of possibility. So if you don't like my pessimism, and you say, fuck your pessimism, Waldman, then we're okay.
If you go to my Football Guys rankings, which are available now, they're way too early. I'm just getting in gear. You will not find Jayden Daniels at the top of my quarterbacks. You'll find a guy who has multiple quarterback one seasons at the top of my quarterbacks ahead of Lamar Jackson, and that would be Josh Allen. He finished his quarterback 6 in 2019. Since then, he's been quarterback 1 3 times: 2020, 2021, 2023. He was quarterback 2 once in 2022 and quarterback 3 last year. So I'm going with the consistent producer. I like Jayden Daniels, but I don't like to pay the premium.
Yeah, that's
if I'm going high end, and that's all there is to it. Right.
So quick question though. I like your Josh Allen pick though, but who's his magic man to his Ricky Bobby? I'd say it's Dalton Kincaid. I think Dalton Kincaid's the guy that he's always like, Dalton, can I have 100-yard game? Can you throw something to me in the end zone? And he's like, no, that's not how this works. I'm the winner. I think but I'm just waiting for Dalton Kincaid to like impregnate his wife or something. Like
I'm just gonna go with the Dalton Kincaid. I will go with the standard answer I now have. Who?
Yeah.
Never heard of him. Travis Kelce will finish 2025. He has said he will return, as I mentioned at the top of this podcast. He'll finish as a top 12, a tight end 1 for fantasy investors. Feel it or fuck it.
I want to say feel it, but I'm going to say fuck it with the addendum that if you can, we want to keep him at a bargain price. I think there's a real possibility he will finish in that range, but you don't want to. But the problem is everyone's going to have that take, and he's going to wind up being overpriced. Right. So, like, if he can find his way to be like somewhere between TE 13 to 16. I think that would be ideal. I don't think it's going to happen. You're probably going to have to take him as like somewhere between your 6th and 9th tight end on the board, and I don't know if you're getting him either at his likely value or slightly higher than that.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, and we'll see how it all plays out. I was surprised that the decision came this early. Not surprised at what it was. I think it might have been different had they gone out victoriously at the Super Bowl. So plenty to figure out as we go over time. Again, 29 days from now, you will all know more about the rookies than we told you today, because the rookie scouting portfolio will be landing in your inbox if you've been wise enough to purchase it. If you've not yet been wise enough to purchase it, allow me. Yeah. Please go to mattwaldman.com, buy this. You'll thank me. You might thank Matt. He had a little something to do with it. I'm just the one who told you to buy it. Look, I use this thing religiously. I mean, it's not just good for this year. It's good for future years when you want to look back on players or as players emerge and you're wondering, why did they emerge and I don't know about this? You'll find out why they're emerging almost certainly with the in-depth coverage you get from Matt Waldman. You're going to be looking at about 1,000 to 1,200 pages of information, including rankings. There's a post-draft version that takes into account with rankings of where the players landed, how they fit the scheme. To me, that's the vital information that runs my entire process. When I start, it's my starting point. Is I'll give you they fit the scheme. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll give you a good example of the post draft, like for last year. Last year, this time, really from November till like this time, and even heading into September, pretty much everyone and their mother said Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be what Malik Neighbors turned out to be. Okay, everyone else, and also there were a lot of people said I like Ladd McConkey, but I don't particularly like him as a fantasy guy early on. Back in April, the RSP liked Ladd McConkey in the same group as all those top guys, and projected him essentially to be a top 15 receiver in fantasy, which most people thought was bonkers, and he was either there or very close to that. And then Marvin Harrison, the projection that based on what I showed in the RSP and what I put in Football Guys was he was going to be a low-end wide receiver 3 at best, most likely just outside that. If you were in a 3-receiver or in a 12-team league, I had him as like wide receiver 38. I believe he was very close to that number. And meanwhile, I said Malik Neighbors was far and away the best wide receiver in this class, while Brian Thomas Jr. was more productive overall. Neighbors got hurt. It would have probably been different if Neighbors didn't get concussed. And even with Janiel Jones, he performed respectively. So, you're going to get guys, it's not just about the guys who people, it's also looking at guys and say, oh, this guy everyone says is the top guy. And you go, not so fast. And then here's also, so you avoided drafting certain guys while you also were able to pick guys at a bargain. And that's what the RSP tends to aim for every year, is to give you those types of things. insights.
And it's delightful prose, and I just like reading all Matt Waldman's words. So there you have it. We'll be back next week. I didn't get Wally fifth last week. Somehow Dwayne McFarland was wise enough not to claim my job because it's a big pain in the ass listening to Matt Waldman every week. But I'm going to be okay.
We got disqualified because your bet was you were right. We could not go under an hour and answer all the questions. No, we're not. We're at 55. We're okay.
Right.
We're okay.
Right. I've done poor clock management today, but I love you all, people, and I love you, Matt Waldman. Let's do this again next week.
All right. See y'all. Bye.